Welcome back to the grind for my very first tier list video. Now, I am excited about this, but I have been a little bit apprehensive about doing this because I know ranking champions in the game can be a bit tedious. There's a lot of factors to consider. There are so many different areas in the game, and no champion is the right answer for all of them. And a lot of different champions that you might not expect to be good will shine in different aspects of the game. I do not want this list to be something that you look at and say, I just pulled a crappy champion, or to say I need these specific champions or I will not be satisfied in the game. I also do not want you to rank up a champion that I say is good to then find out that you don't like that champion or can't play them well. So you have to decide what champions are best for you, what champions you enjoy playing, and make those decisions for yourself. But this is to be a general guide to help you make those decisions, to help you understand why I value certain champions. And you can take a look, the champions that have a link on them do go to a video of mine that I have made to give a breakdown or a guide of how to play them or where they are effective the most. Now, I have separated these tiers into 5 categories. The first one being top tier, and that is they're kind of a no-brainer rank up. That most players, when they get those champions, are going to want them ranked up as soon as they can, and that's just kind of the top tier of the game. The next one down is what I would say strongly consider these champions because most players will find a good use for them right away, regardless of their roster. These champions are ones that in various situations will have a huge impact, or they cover a very broad range of needs in the game. The next tier down is the roster dependent category. Now, this is one where some accounts will find good use for these champions, and they kind of fill a specific need. Now, if you have a very developed roster already, these champions are going to be ones that are going to fall into the category of, well, I don't really need them. But if you enjoy that champion, then I would say rank them up anyways. But if you have to be very careful with your resource spending, like for me as a free-to-play player, it's hard to rank up champions I want to play when there's champions I know I need more for progression. I do have to make tough decisions, but roster dependent is depending on your roster, these may be the right champion for you. And a lot of these ones in this category for new players or developing rosters that are still progressing through a lot of the story content, a lot of these champions could have a major impact on your progression. So don't sleep on these ones. Do your research, look into them, and see if they fill the need that you currently need to continue progressing in the game. The next category is situational. Now, these are largely champions that, they're kind of so-so, but they may have one specific thing that they do very well, or they might fill a certain need. And a good example of that would be like Cosmic Ronin. He's kind of a dud champion overall, but in this one specific scenario where the opponents have a lot of buffs, he will shine and he can stun lock and he will make a potentially very challenging fight extremely simple. So that's the situational category. The last category is the kind of meh category. Largely, these have a very, very finite and specific purpose, a very limited use, and they have a lot of other downsides that really don't make you want to use them for that use, or they're just kind of useless altogether. So these champions are ones like Cyclops or Punisher, and they just don't really do a whole lot. But in this meh category, I did put a little star or asterisk beside some champions that if these are like your first 5-star or your first 4-star, they may still benefit you as a very low level player because either they've got damage, they have at least some specific utility that might benefit you as you continue to progress in the lower tier story content. But for the most part, it's kind of an category that we're not really going to focus on. So obviously I can't cover every single champion and explain why they are where they are, but hopefully over the times I do these tier lists, I'll be able to touch a little bit here and there on the champions that I think are where they are and why they are there. And I will touch on a few champions in certain categories, ones that I was kind of back and forth on. And some of those would be Sunspot. I actually had him in strongly considering roster dependent up and down because, he does do some good damage, and that's great to have, but if you have other damage dealers, you don't necessarily need him. But that being said, he does have easy access to incinerates. He can build power up by, siphoning back those incinerates into power. He is incinerate immune, so he does have a little bit more going for him. And if you throw on a mutant power booster, you have like another Corvus on your hands. He can just throw back-to-back special attacks, ideally without suicides on, And so that's why I ended up bumping him up into strongly consider, because he may add more value than just the damage if you do need that incinerate immunity, or maybe a situation where you can gain power faster than your opponent can. Let's take a look at another champion like Colossus. I was back and forth on whether he was top tier or strongly consider tier for me, and I had him down in strongly consider for a bit, but I was talking to some people and reevaluating what he has to offer. And similar to Sunspot, he has immunities. He's got lots of armor. He's got buffs. He can deal a ton of damage. He's got a lot of amazing synergies. And when you throw on power boosters, you have a powerhouse on your hands as well. So I ended up putting him up into the top tier category. He does preferably need to be awakened and have synergies going for him, so that is a bit more to ask. But let me know what your thoughts are on him. Domino is a champion that I have down in roster dependent. I haven't played Domino a lot myself. I know a lot of people have suggested putting him up to strongly consider, or her up to strongly consider. But because of the limited utility that she has, and that she's mainly a damage dealing champion and mainly with 2 other synergy champions, albeit they're decent champions, I kind of put her down in roster dependent. If she has what you need, then she would be a great champion to take up. But that's just to show that even this roster dependent category has some really good champions. Okay, now situational. My favorite champion in this is Psylocke. I did recently put out a video on Psylocke, and I hope to put out more. I do want another synergy piece, Spider-Man 2099, who can get her ability accuracy reduction over 100%, but I do have a general video on her already. If you want to take a look at that, I will update that link in there. I don't have it in there right now. Now let's move down to the skill category and touch on a few champions there. Obviously, Aegon, Nick Fury. Shang-Chi is an amazing champion. He's newer. He does not need to be awakened, although some people might say he does. He gets a lot more damage and ability to crit through blocks with the awakened ability, but he has a ton of utility even without his awakened ability. So he does get better, but he doesn't need it. I guess I forgot to mention the kind of legend in this is A means they need to be awakened. HS means they need high sig. SYN, Sin, is for synergy. Means they benefit or they need the synergy quite a bit. And then the little less than or greater than sign is they benefit more if they are whatever comes next. So, for example, Kitty Pryde. She doesn't need to be awakened, but when she is awakened, she gets a lot better, or she unlocks a lot more potential. So she is better if awakened. And so Shang-Chi, he is a little bit better if awakened, but I didn't feel like he needed it enough to put that in there. Kingpin and Mole Man are other top tier champions in my opinion. I do have a Kingpin video, and I hope to put out a Mole Man video soon as well. Killmonger, I would say, is a strongly considered champion. He does need the awakened ability. Elsa Bloodstone is a lot better with the awakened ability. And Falcon, I was actually kind of going back and forth on whether or not he should be in top tier. But I was thinking to myself, I feel like there's players who don't love Falcon's playstyle, even though he has a lot to offer. The one downside is there are nodes or champions that can reduce your ability to decrease their ability accuracy reduction. So even though Falcon decreases it 100%, there are champions and nodes where he will not be able to get it completely zeroed out. So that is one of the downsides to Falcon, but he is an amazing champion. You preferably want him awakened, but he does not need to be. And he's one that I would teeter back and forth between top tier and strongly consider, but for now, I think I'm going to keep him in the strongly consider. He was actually my first rank 3. And then in the roster dependent category, some honorable mentions. Blade, he's an amazing champion still. Crossbones, I've been playing around with him a lot. I got a video coming out hopefully in the near future, and he may end up going up to the strongly considered category soon. Black Panther, OG, he does need high sig. A lot of players don't love his need to ramp up the bleeds and the charges, but he does have some good potential. I do have some videos on him. And then I don't know, we need to spend much more time on the lower tier champions, but if you have specific champions that you feel like I have done an injustice to or should be up or down, put it in the comments so I can touch on that later. Maybe I'll move them up or down with your feedback, but at least I can explain in the next video why they are where they are in my opinion. But I don't have time to talk on everyone, otherwise this video would be insanely long. And then Mystic, those top 4 champions are pretty straightforward. I don't really have a lot to say about the Mystic category so far. Tigra is, I would say, pretty close to top tier champ, if not top tier. But again, she takes a lot of skill to play, and she ideally would be awakened, but you can access her full utility even without her being awakened. But she's a difficult champion to play. She does have a lot to offer if you can maintain her neutralize effect. neutralize, whatever that is. And she can pack out a ton of damage and bypass a lot of difficult champion special attacks and stuff like that. So we'll keep her down here for now, but I do think she could be in the top tier for champions. And then down in the roster dependent category, some honorable mentions are the Hood, great champion. Scarlet Witch Sigil, you do have to pay for that one. Unfortunately, I do not have access to her because I don't pay to play this game, unfortunately, but she can do a ton of degen damage. She can deal with buffs very well, so one to consider. Guillotine, I think, is going to end up there, but we'll see after her buff where she ends up. I'm going to make a video on her for that. And then in the situational, for example, Dormammu can be a good champion. He can control power very well, but he lacks damage and other utility, so he's down there. But you know, if you get him as your first 5-star and you struggle with power gain champions, or with specific champions that you want to limit power on, then you know he might be your option if you have no other options. Now let's go on to the science category. The one I want to point out here is Mr. Fantastic. He is an amazing champion, and I am still dying to have him as a 5 or 6 star. One, for synergy purposes, but on his own, he's an amazing champion. And for things like power reversal or heal reversal, he actually rivals with Void as far as effectiveness. The thing with Void is you technically don't have to touch the champion in order to get those effects. Whereas Mr. Fantastic, you do have to play aggressive and keep up your debuffs in order for that to happen. He does not need to be awakened, but when he does get his awakened ability, he gets a rapid increase in his combat power rate, so he will be throwing special attacks off back to back pretty quickly. So if you have suicides on, you might just want to stick to the special 3, but he might be better to have without suicides on. And then down, we've got some great champions in the strongly considered category. And in the roster dependent category, let me know if you have any concerns about these champions here. But again, honorable mention to a champion that is typically viewed as a dud, that is in the situational category, Abomination. If you pair him up with Red Guardian, he does some insane bleed damage and he can just melt champions. So definitely you don't want to ignore the champions down in these categories. You just might want to do a bit more research to figure out if that is a champion for you. Now on to the Cosmic class. Some pretty clear options at the top there with Hercules, Cosmic Ghost Rider, Corvus Glaive, and Hyperion. Hyperion you want awakened. Corvus Glaive gets better when awakened because you can cheat death. Hercules is an amazing champion, does a ton of damage without the awakened ability, but he does get a lot better with the awakened ability because you can have that immortality at the end and go unblockable, which can come in very clutch in certain situations. And at higher sig, he gets even better because it just lasts even longer. So that's why he's got a lot of symbols beside him, but hopefully that's clear enough and not too confusing or complicated. And then down in the strongly consider, I would say Angela and Odin are a couple of my favorites, but also shoutouts to Silver Surfer and King Groot. A lot of these champions have more of an impact on a roster than some players might think, and they might, you know, brush them off. Obviously, people are getting more familiar with Angela and seeing that she can be a powerhouse and great for a lot of scenarios. Odin, I say, is an amazing champion standalone, not to mention the fact that he turns other champions into a lot stronger champions with his pre-fight abilities. Odin has very easy access to True Strike, which is a rare commodity, especially in the Cosmic class, so he can lock down champions that evade and have auto block right after his first special 1. And if you can parry, you parry and throw off a few heavy attacks, and you get massive increase in your combat power rate as well, so you can build up your special attacks pretty quickly. And once you get your special 1 off and get that True Strike buff, it's really easy to maintain it. Now the one downside to him is if you use him in a back-to-back fight, then he does lack some damage, unfortunately, after that because of his Odin Sleep mechanic. But there's a lot of good champions down in these lower tiers as well that you could benefit a lot from, like Red Goblin is amazing. Hela can be really good with the Odin synergy, but is a difficult champion to play even in that regard. Vision Arcus can do a lot of work. Terrax is awesome. Cull Obsidian is a bit squishy with his low block proficiency, but he can pack a massive punch. And then, of course, a lot of champions down in the situational use as well that can come in handy if they are, you know, a limited option for you. Now, down to the tech class. Obviously, we have Ghost, Warlock, and I do keep Guillotine 2099 up there for progressing players especially. It'll help you clear difficult content much easier. She's got regeneration. She can do Abyss, you could do Labyrinth of Legends, but more so Labyrinth, less so Abyss, but still an option if you need her. And then in the strongly considered category, Guardian, he can deal a ton of damage on his own. He's got some utility. He does need high sig, preferably, and he has a lot to offer to his team as well, with most notably increasing block proficiency. Hulkbuster, love the champion. He's so much fun to play. He is better when he's awakened because he gets attack when he's healing, regenerating when you push him down below 15% health, and high sig increases the attack that you get, so he actually would be one that you could add better with high sig as well. I did recently put out a video on him. And Ultron is a great champion. Penny Parker is a good champion. Mysterio, with the Penny Parker synergy, is a really amazing champion. Otherwise, he'd be down a tier, but with that synergy, he's great. I do think Silver Centurion deserves to be in this spot as well. And then all these champions down here in the roster dependent category are also really amazing champions. Spider-Man Stark Enhanced, he's great, preferably awakened. Howard the Duck has some utility. He can get buffs, stack debuffs. He's bleed immune. Iron Man Infinity War can do some good stuff as well. Dr. Octopus, some players would argue he should go up a tier. I do think he takes a lot of skill to play, certain play style to make him work optimally. But depending on your roster, he might answer a few issues that you need answered. Nimrod is a good one as well, a new champion. We might see him moving up in the tier, who knows, but I think for now this is where I want to keep him. Punisher 2099 has the unique ability to really decrease the opponent's combat power when you're attacking into them. So you can do a full fight in even Act 6 or 7 and not let the opponent get a single bar of power. So that is a very, very valuable thing to have, and I think that this is that depending on your roster, he might be very impactful for you. Same goes for the other champions listed there. War Machine, a new one that I pulled, very happy about that. He has some pre-fights that make the other tech champions even better. So, and on his own, he's a pretty solid champion. So definitely something to consider with him. And then Star-Lord, situationally, obviously when you're doing like Apex content like Labyrinth of Legends, he can shine for you there if that's your only option. Both of the Visions, if they're awakened, situationally they can do some good power control, but they kind of lack with the damage, unfortunately. But this is kind of how I've laid out my tier list. I'm really interested to hear your feedback and your thoughts, particularly on, if you think this will be a valuable tier list for me to continue updating, if you like the way I presented this tier list, if you like the way I structured my tiers, and then of course feedback on specific champions, if why are they in this tier or that tier, they should go up to this tier or down to this tier based on X, Y, and Z. But I do want this to be a constructive thing where you kind of share your points and views so that I can evaluate that further and then come to a conclusion to update my tier list if I come to agree with you. But like I said, some of the situational champions, certain players will love that champion and they will do amazing things with that champion. But it does not mean that they should be up in the strongly considered category necessarily. But things may change as time goes. So I'm really excited to hear your feedback in the comments below. I'm not sure if I'll update this every month or every 2 or 3 months, but that's something that I would like to hear from you as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I do hope to see you in the next video.